Mabuhay!
Hi! Welcome to
The Babaylan Bruja Book Club Podcast.
It's Your Village Kapatid, Steph.
And Amy. Here we are together again, and as always, in efforts to decolonize our minds, bodies, and reconnect with spirit by ways of relation via conversation, of education, interpretation, and integration.
So, this is our invitation for you to join us on our journeys as we discuss the works of honored artists, authors, and thought leaders across the Filipino diaspora.
Quick disclaimer, we want to acknowledge that in this moment, everyone is exactly where they need to be.
And since we are not experts, yet we are sharing our own unique lived experiences, we invite you to take or toss any statements, any opinions, any words we may use as you choose.
And we are so glad you found your way here.
So as always, or do we say hello? I'm sorry.
No, we just jump into the prayer and then
Okay.
we'll cut and then
Sorry.
do the thing where we're like, ah.
Okay. All right. So as always, before we begin, we want to take a moment to ground, taking a pause to drop into our bodies and become fully present in this space. If it's safe for you, I invite you to close your eyes, straighten your spine, and direct your focus into your breath. Take a few deep inhales, and I want you to extend your belly out. And as you exhale, bring your belly in. Once more. Connect back to your body and into this moment. I invite you to not worry about tomorrow, yesterday, even what you have to do later today. Can you just allow yourself to feel how this feels to let go? As we begin our conversation, we'd like to thank God, Batala, Creator, for another gathering. In gratitude, we acknowledge our benevolent ancestors and invite all these forces to support and guide this conversation today. Thanking the ancestors of the land Amy and I currently occupy, knowing that we cannot do our own remembrance work without remembering them. For Amy, that's the mound builders that are the Hopewell and Adena people in Ohio. And for myself, that is the Bay Miwok Yokuts people in the Inland Bay Area of California. With gratitude, we also acknowledge your presence, dear Kapatid, your energy, your lights, no matter wherever and whenever you're tuning in.
Hi, Sissy.
Hi, Sissy sis.
Hi. Here we are again. Hello, Babaylan Brujas. Welcome back to another episode.
This is episode 31.
Oh, is it? Okay.
My age. Just kidding.
All right. So
not.
how are we doing a decolonization heart check?
Yes, we are. Would you like to go first or?
You go first today.
All right. On the fly. I didn't really think of this. Okay.
All right. I'm going to time you.
Okay.
So yes, we're going to talk about decolonization, what we've been doing.
Really?
Yeah. I'm trying to buy you time. I'm trying to explain so you can think.
I got what is time? Okay, that's confirmation. I know what's okay.
Okay, and begin.
So what I've been decolonizing is if some folks who know what I do, I work at a call center, and time, it is actually, for me, it's very masculine in terms of grounding me to tell me what time I gotta be on this phone call, what time I have to chart, what time I have to take a break. And so I was reflecting the other day and I was like, time actually works here in my favor. And it doesn't in sometimes, but it's both. It's that both and. So while time, everybody says like, there's not enough time in the day, or, I wasted time or whatever, working at my position, like every single minute counts. And I'm telling you, when break happens for me, every single second counts. And they clock every second of calls. So it's just kind of funny to be in that liminal space of dancing with time while I'm like working and being creative, and then also catering to myself. And so in that realm, I was like, time is all right sometimes, because I can't not say time now. But like I feel like my double air ass sign needs time to know, like, okay, I gotta not be outside talking to this palmcestor and go inside and get my ass on the phone,
And time. Speaking of time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think too, like, time is what you make of it, because it can be a structure. It can give you a structure, and sometimes you need a structure, but also sometimes you can slow down time.
I feel like that's, because it's only May, and I feel like this year has been a long one already.
Yeah.
So, anyways, time, decolonizing time, my relationship with time.
All right, my turn.
Your turn. Okay. 1 minute and 30 seconds. You ready, sis?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right.
I don't know. That was aggressive.
No, that's typical. That's like
yeah, that is me.
I'm up for any challenge. Rock, paper, scissors.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good thing, sis.
Okay. All right.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, so decolonization, heart check. I've been really sitting with how I show up in the community. So recently, today actually, there was a march downtown, like a protest for that Planned Parenthood put on, hashtag bans off our bodies, all that stuff. That's
you went?
Well, I didn't go. My one friend here, she's a doula, and she was organizing people to go. And but I was like, I have a kid's birthday party, and then my son has soccer. And, I came from a church context where I left my kids because of what I believed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't leave them, but I mean, I left them a lot. Like, I wasn't there for like Easter Sundays because I was leading worship at church. So, you know what I mean? Like, so I was like, I'm not going to go. I'm going to be with my kids. But it's like cognitive dissonance to like, the world is fucking burning down. And here I am at a kid's party, like, la, 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 everything's fine. But, so I'm like, how do I show up in integrity in the community? I'm not shaming myself, but I'm just thinking about like next time, maybe it is a thing like, hey, there we go. Just telling the kids like, this is important to me. And this, like, let's show up in the community together, so skip the soccer game because the world is burning down. I'm like, oh, go, but it's important to him, and he doesn't see that the world is burning. So it's like very, like, how do we show up? This is all new to me. I'm still learning. So, but I feel like that is part of decolonization, because it's like not doing the status quo just to do the status quo, So
I hear a conflict of priorities.
Yeah.
Because there's something that like you're naturally inclined to do, and you're honoring there's other things you're naturally inclined to do too, to be a mom and being like an active member in the community. So
yeah, because like I wanted to fucking go. I wanted to rage against the machine. Like the warrior in me was like, let's fucking go.
oh yeah,
And then the mom in me is like,
but wait, we have to go to soccer.
we have soccer, and that's important to our son. And like I said, I think, I don't need to figure it out today. So thank you for everyone. And thank you, sis, for witnessing me in my evolution and my learnings. But, I was in the church circles, and I was absent for a lot of things because of what I believed was so important. While I know this is probably more important, honestly, but also knowing that there are people who are voicing, and I don't have to like be on the front lines. So
yeah. I had like two thoughts. Is it okay if I share?
Yeah, please.
What if it's like, you said you sat in circles and now you're like available now in this space to show up consciously for that.
Yeah.
What if that's like guilt? And also, damn it, I had it. It went away. Which is understandable because it's like now you have the time to show up in that space, but you also have other priorities. The other thing I was going to say about that is, that's the beauty of the battle. Like we have waves of warriors, and in a way, Sissy, you're cultivating the next batch of warriors. And so you being a presence for your son and your family, like that's healing in itself.
Yeah. Thank you, sis. I appreciate that. So, but I'm just thinking about like, I'm sometimes there are kids that protest, but just talking to my kids about what is happening,
That's a protest. Yes. There was a meme that was like, people think this is the revolution, but actually this is the revolution. It's like a picture of like people fighting on the battlefield, but it's actually being at home with your kids and reading books and educating them and making them aware of the world we live in. Yep.
Yeah. It's all needed. It's all needed.
All needed. Yeah. Then you'll be able to do protests one day. So
I just want to.
I know. Right.
Yeah. But in another life. So anyway, that is our decolonization heart check. Babaylan Brujas, check in with yourself. Let us know in the DMs, in the comments below, or what have you. What are you decolonizing lately? So
and shout out to the people who are listening and responding. We salute you and appreciate you.
Thank you.
We're in part 3 of the book, and in this section we transition into what I want to call our manang. Lenny felt a little bit different, or right. Describes as a wonderful opening piece of the Babaylan resurrections out of the crocodile's belly.
Let's get out.
We out. We're out now. We're outside. So written by Tera Maxwell, a scholar and energy healer, she proses her Filipino studies dissertation, challenging us to think about and/or remember the Philippine-American War, plus Spanish and American imperialism. And hear it a lot today, has affected generations of Filipinos across the world. Tera seems to ask us to recall what private individual memories we have as part of the collective memory that could be brought up to challenge the dominant versions of the U.S. history where Filipinos are literally forgotten. Introducing terms such as imperial amnesia, imperial trauma, racial/imperial melancholy. We are excited to potentially cover these terms today and how they intertwine in the fabric of what it means to be a Filipino in today's society, existing consciously or unconsciously, effectively, as Tera mentions, resurrected, and on our own healing journeys to self-actualize and mourn to heal what our ancestors could not.
Yeah, this was a good chapter. This was a really good chapter. I appreciated the balance of the academic and then also the intuitive, and how they kind of walked hand
Mm.
in hand in her, because I feel like this was part of her, like an academic thing that she put together, but she also very blatantly talks about energy healing and intuition and her own experiences of seeing literally seeing her ancestors and healing something. So I don't know, I like that. I like a both and situation. I like a balanced
I
situation.
know that's what it's about.
Mhm.
For for me, I'll speak for me. Sounds like for you, sis. But some people don't like balance. How about that?
Because it can be
I
uncomfortable, because the balance literally mean, like, if you think
mm,
about balancing on a balance beam, it's like it's hard work. And
so
to
it's
hold
easier
and
to teeter totter and be on one side.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then like if it's a both and, you have to, like, your heart needs to open up, because you need to have capacity to like
Mhm.
hold those
Mm,
two things, you know?
yep. To be that expansive.
Mm.
And it does take some recognition work and
Yeah.
being okay with it. So yeah, like you said, scary. So, and for some people, that's like a thing they've been used to. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of buzzword nervous system um circulating the internet now about, is your nervous system regulated? And so our nervous systems can get locked into a state of trauma where we feel like being on that
Mm.
teeter totter
Mm.
is safer than finding balance.
Yep. 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 Yeah. So,
Um,
all right. Well, thanks for that. Brown Girl Cliff Notes, sis.
and you're welcome. Okay, vocab words.
Vocabulary words today. So I'll go
Mhm.
first.
Yes.
This is from our Brown Girl Cliff Notes, from what we just heard. I'm going to be talking about imperial trauma on page 233. So Tera says imperial trauma points to a generational pattern, a cluster of beliefs and effects that started at the point of imperial contact, but continue to influence even when the traumatic memory is forgotten. Dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun. So she had talked about her, before this, she talked about her grandfather and how he went through this particular, he experienced a lot of racism in the was it in the military? Anyway,
Mhm.
there was a part of him where he was saying that it was fine, but then another part she saw him like crying and really like working through some things. So she says, even the story of my grandfather's heritage reveals the layered nature of trauma, so banal it hardly registers as trauma. So like there are things that get passed down in our DNA, that's the ancestral healing part, that's the ancestral
Yeah.
healing part. So um but I just feel like even with what's happening now in Inang Bayan, in the motherland, you know if there are any Babaylan brujas that are there right now, hope you guys are okay. But
Yeah.
that is a continuation of imperial trauma, only because there was a destabilization of the Philippines anyway, because of us being colonized, right? So I know there's a lot of older generation in the Philippines is like, well, we have a dictator, oh, say la vie or whatever, like never mind, like we lived through it, we'll live through it again, like kind of like it's not
Passive.
trauma, it's fine,
Yeah.
so
And
yeah.
then yeah, that oh, sorry, I cut you off, sis.
No, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, I mean, this language here of like it says a kind of energetic ripple in the DNA. And even her story about her grandmother, which was fascinating because it highlights like what viruses do to people. Like they make people scared of each other. And it's a good story, y'all. In the beginning, she shared that her grandmother got leprosy and the whole village like thought she was so sick. And so even her own family like wasn't really allowed to see her. And then the grandmother committed suicide, trigger alert.
Yeah.
And so while we can play along and we can this word resilient, right, in the face of adversity, like that shit bothers our bodies and it
Yeah.
goes through DNA and then gets passed down. And as somebody who has a chronic condition, as I was reading this, I literally wrote like my friend had sent me because it's May, happy Lupus Awareness Month. There's an article that was published by the National Lupus Foundation that Hispanic and Asian women are disproportionately affected by being diagnosed with lupus, and they're typically women.
Yeah, that's right. You had sent that link.
Yeah, and I thought
Yeah,
that
that
was
was very interesting.
fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Because women of color or brown women in particular, we exist in the system and we're told not to accept ourselves or to ignore ourselves. And it's interesting, again, bringing it back to like the DNA
Yeah.
language. So,
Yes. So imperial trauma, that was my word. And it just kind of makes you kind of think about your own story and own generational, what are the generational patterns? Where has imperial trauma shown up in your story? So
yes, yeah,
yeah.
it actually continues on page 234 like intimate spaces of our hearts, our kitchens, our beds, and our minds. So, it can be everywhere.
Yes. So
Anyway,
that is my
thanks for that
word.
word, Sissy.
You're welcome. I'm complete.
Mine is on page 234. It's Imperial Melancholia. And it's actually a word that she kind of enmeshed together. It's typical Filipino. Or is it just humans in general? There's a Kazanjian study. They coined the term racial melan. I can't say it right now. Melancholia.
Melancholia, yes.
And it was a study about the phenomenon of depression on Asian American college students. So she kind of coined it to become Imperial Melancholia for, I guess, this dissertation. And it says here that melancholia is the longing for the unattainable, i.e., whiteness, which signifies assimilation. As a result of this longing, there exists for this marginalized ethnic group a type of national melancholia, a national haunting with negative social effects. So, imperial melancholia best captures the Filipino-American experience as a kind of racial melancholia haunted by histories of Spanish and American imperialism. So this is deep, right? It's a lot.
Yeah.
It unpacks a lot. It's a term that's what vocabs word do, right? It defines a lot of things into one concept for us to explore. And I like that she brought up that it's more than just the Filipino American, it's also Spanish American, and how this quest to achieve whiteness is embedded in us. And
Yeah. Yeah. I like how she says, or I don't like I like how she says it. I don't like the fact that it's real, but she also says that Imperial Bengali does not begin with the story of immigration to the United States, but in the Philippines with nostalgia for America. And it's
right.
that there was a couple chapters back we talked about like the golden legend, how like people in the Philippines were taught to look at America and be like, that's the dream. It's the golden dream, right? So I feel like that is what she's talking about here. Like it starts with kind of that, because we're like longing for it, right? So
Yeah, it's melancholy. It's sad. It's, you know, it's not a happy term. And I think part of healing is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And like you mentioned earlier with the election, and people are like, bahala na kind of attitude. It's like you're kind of overriding this feeling that we are entitled to be melancholy about it. Like we don't know what this dictatorship's going to do now to the motherland, you know?
yeah. And that term imperial melancholia really hit me as well. And if I can just highlight something as well,
Yeah.
she points out that in the book America is in the Heart by Carlos Bulosan, he discovered his childhood adoration for the United States and American culture to be blatantly one-sided. When he finally arrived to the United States, he realized how little his race was regarded here. The mockery of it all is that Filipinos are taught to regard Americans as their equals. The terrible truth is America shatters the Filipinos' dream of fraternity. Like that, yeah. So like all of our kababayan in Inang Bayan in the Philippines are like there are some who are like, oh my God, like America, yes. And then they come here and they realize America's not thinking about them as much as they're thinking about us, you know?
Yeah.
Like Filipino people think about so much about America, and America doesn't think about the Philippines.
America just wants to use the Philippines.
Exactly.
That's why it acquired the land.
So it's like, oh my gosh, that's it's like I don't know. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Right.
And then just that unattainable whiteness, which signifies assimilation, like just that's why it makes you melancholy. That's why it makes you sad. Like as an adopted person, I kind of like really resonated with that, because I wanted to be something I was not, because I wanted to be part of white spaces and I couldn't. And so that made me sad. Then it made me think, maybe I never really had depression. Maybe I just had imperialistic melancholia.
Yeah. I mean, make that a diagnosis.
Yeah.
It's right.
Yeah. Because once I started, really embracing who I was, that's when, things turned around. But anyway, that's a term.
Yeah. And like what you're saying, embracing what it was, then that's like a level of acceptance. So I think these terms, while they're very melancholy, they invite you to, I mean, the ancestral rage, like I'm not gonna lie, like it's flaring up sometimes intermittently for me, especially when I walk out. I'm in the city I'm in, and there's definitely, more white spaces here. So I'm like more hypersensitive, like, ooh, you don't like me because I'm brown, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but we are in 2022, and I like to believe that there is a shift happening consciously. Especially that's why I'm like, go for these brown people who are brave enough to go into these white spaces, like to be in Ohio, right? To be in Idaho, to be in states that are like predominantly white, like they don't have like a Filipino population like San Francisco or Daly City, right?
Yeah.
To be a representative in that space, I think that obviously, we talked about it, like that's such a powerful thing to own. And you have to go through the things you've been processing too. So
exactly. So anyway,
thank you.
Thank you. And are you complete?
I am.
Okay. All right. So we're moving on to quotes.
Quotes. I did one on page 233 to 234. And actually, now that I run it back, I think it tied to the terms we were talking about: imperial trauma, imperial melancholia.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
I know. I thought we were gonna go back to it, but I wanted to share a paragraph at the end that we talked about Catherine de Goya, and that was a controversial author as well. But she highlighted how like Filipinos are cultural barriers. They build instant friendships and they share their lives and possessions freely. So it's on the bottom page 234. I like that they talk about even his story of her grandfather. She's talking about her grandfather. The story of my grandfather's childhood reveals the violence of alienation from his Filipino heritage while idolizing his Spanish heritage. Even his good qualities were not identified as Filipino, but rather Christian. Imperial trauma covers the more diffused kinds of trauma, beginning with national trauma, war trauma, and more public kinds of trauma. But also the private traumas in the intimate spaces of our hearts, in our kitchens, and our beds, and our minds. So I guess I picked this quote because I wanted to kind of like highlight how Filipinos, despite like being oppressed and conquered, like we're still finding ourselves in spaces to be friendly, to be, I don't know, nice to people. And
it's not, and that is not necessarily identified as something as ours. Like that's just who we are as people. It's kind of like, well, if you're nice, it's because you're Catholic or you're Christian or something.
Right.
Like right. It's not like, oh,
tying that in, sis.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, it's like a way, it was a nice way of like remembering, like, you know, I think of like, for example, I think of my dad, like he's first generation. He was born here. He was born there, and he came here when he was young, and he grew up in the streets of like San Francisco, and he saw a lot of things at a young age, like, you know, people who are not white in the neighborhoods he was in. And then somehow my grandfather and grandmother got them out of there through hard work and bootstraps, you know, pulled their bootstraps. But I say that to say that even though like his childhood was, you know, running around and seeing all the things that the systems put people of color into to commit crimes or whatever, like he's fun. He likes to crack jokes, and he's like lighthearted, and he does share his stories, and he is opening and inviting and stuff like that. And to me, like, it's admirable. I don't know why I'm being a little, you know, that we can be nice to a country that has harmed us, because there's those nuances too of the opportunities it has provided, but it's at a great cost.
At a great cost. Yeah. And that's such a good point about the cost of assimilation, or the cost of being here. I mean, I don't want to be ungrateful.
Right.
At the same time, you know, it's layers. It's
I know.
And and it's hitting me too, because like, so I shared on my Insta the other, like maybe a couple weeks ago, about how there was this incident that I had with an older white woman, and she found, you know, where are you from? That sort of thing. I'm like, I'm from here. I live here. But so I'm just like, well, my cultural heritage is Filipino. And she's like, oh, I had a roommate who was Filipino. Your people are very congenial. And I just didn't like, right. right? If you're not on the YouTubes, that was a face palm moment from Untitled. Like, what the hell? Exactly, right? So, but at the same time, Filipinos are very congenial. We are very friendly. We are fun as hell. We are so fun.
I
Do you know what I'm
know.
saying?
Yeah, we are. I mean,
So, but it's just like, let us say that. That's what it is. Like, I'm tired of like everybody else defining what a Filipino is. Like, oh, your people are congenial. Oh, you have good food. Oh, you're this. You sing karaoke. Like, no. Okay, yeah, I do. But let me tell you who I am. Like, you don't need to tell me who I am. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I do. But let me don't white explain me, okay?
Yeah.
I know what I do.
Right. Like, I am congenial, but you don't need to tell me.
Yeah, and it's funny because like I feel like again, nervous system buzz, like fawning is a way of like trying to, I don't know, like what? Like what are you trying to do? Fawn me with a compliment of like literally yesterday, sis, these microaggressions are real. My cell phone went off and I had like a drummy playlist ringtone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was having an appointment and the person who was facilitating it is white. Bless her heart, sweet woman. But she was like, she looked at me, she was like, that looks like that would be your ringtone. Or that sounds like it'd be your ringtone.
Oh no.
And there was like an awkward, like, I looked at her like, my mind was like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
just because it's like drum patterns or whatever.
Like, oh yeah, that seems like a brown person thing.
And she proceeded to ask me, she's like, do you dance? And I was gonna say, do you dance? Because white people dance too, right? But y'all don't use what? Bass? Is that what you're trying to say? Like, you don't dance to drums? It was like, it took me a moment. It was one of those like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What did you say? Like,
yeah.
I was like, actually, I do dance. Like, but
yeah.
what? Like,
yeah. It's just, and that's the thing too, when those things happen, it just puts you in a like, what, like you don't even really know what to say because it's out of left field. It's hard to follow their train of thought. You're like, how did I get here? How did we get here? Like, what? So
ooh, girl.
anyway, whoo.
My guava leaf right now. Because that shit was like, there was a cool 0.5 seconds, sis. I was like, wait a minute. Like my spirit was like, what she just say? Like kind of thing. My higher self was like, excuse me? Like,
yeah. Yeah.
anyways. That's my quote.
Okay.
I feel complete.
All right, Sissy. Thank you for bringing that. And so my quote I wanted to highlight from the end of the chapter. So she says, there was a time when I used to think language about effecting change was just hopeful rhetoric. It sounded good, but I only half believed it. What I have come to know through energy healing is the power of words, language, and stories to shift energy and literally to shift reality. We are only the stories that we tell, the memories that we hold on to. So why not choose empowering stories? It is not so much what happens to us that matters, but the stories we tell about what happened and the actions that spring forth from our thoughts. And then she goes on to say, it may be too soon, but I imagine a time when imperial trauma or decolonization no longer has the power to evoke pain and struggle. It will no longer be forgotten history, but akin to recalling old grief turned to forgiven remembering and ironic gratitude. There are rumors, of course, not academically verifiable, that we are shifting to the intuition age and leaving behind the age of capitalism and industrialization ruled by masculine thinking. So I feel like she ends it with a lot of hope, saying, you know, okay, so there is imperial trauma, there is imperial melancholia, and right, how once we identify those stories and energetically heal them and do our shadow work, and grieve, how do we also move forward?
Yeah.
And it's you know, words are spells. We say that all the time, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, yeah, that happened, but like telling it in a different way.
Yes.
I don't know like an example off the top of my head, but and honestly, part of me wanted to, like, truthfully, when I read that, I was like, what, are we just gonna love and light this away? Like, we're just gonna talk about it like it's fine, and then it's not gonna be. But it's a both and situation.
Yes.
Because you get stuck in the trauma, you can identify so hard with the trauma.
Yes.
Right?
Teeter-totter.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So, and sometimes you do have to identify with the trauma in order to grieve it out.
Absolutely. You can't that's spiritually bypassing.
Right.
I feel like these terms were created. Sorry,
No, keep going.
I think that was a wonderful way to, talk about how words are spells, but thoughts are spells
Yeah,
too.
because they create energy.
They do. And I feel like that's part of the layers of the onion that a lot of the collective is realizing, like, oh damn, like I'm gonna peel these layers, but there's still more to unpeel. And I'm gonna go with, I'm a stretch with the cheesy metaphor, but like, crying, like it's like you have to let yourself cry, like, and or process it however you want. Because and honor that it's not a linear thing. It's gonna happen. You might just be driving and be pissed. Like a white person might cut you off and like, you know what I mean? or something really does happen. Some really aggression does happen. And yeah, I think that's part of this conversation on raising the collective consciousness and building new earth. Because we have to transmute. We get to transmute
and alchemize that energy. Yeah, alchemize.
You have a decision now. Do you want to stay mad and sad, or do you want to be here? And some days it's gonna be a teeter-totter. So how can we find that balance?
Yeah. I remember, okay, so trigger warning. I'm just gonna lightly just generally, I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. So when I first went to therapy, we were taught, or like I went to a support group for it, we were taught to not say victim, but to say survivor. Like we were victims because that wasn't our fault. We were taken advantage of. Right. And we're also survivors. So choosing to say, I am a survivor of, instead of going, that happened to me, or I'm a victim, like, actively. So I think that's what she's kind of saying here as well, is like, it's more empowering to say you're a survivor than, it's kind of like, it doesn't negate the fact that it happened, but it kind of shifts it to be like, okay, it's more of an empowering thing. So
yes,
but yes. Everybody breathe.
I just blew out my candle. All the breaths you need.
Yes, take your breaths. And I love how she also, because this is my hope too, that we are shifting into the intuition age. Like, come on.
We hella are. Yeah.
Like capitalism, what? And I'm not saying like the whole, like there are maybe good things about capitalism, but it's a system that just needs to
chill out for a little bit.
Chill out. It needs
let the feminine come in and balance some things.
Yeah, and balance both and. Yeah. So anyway, that is my
great closer quote.
Yep. As we end our conversation and close out this container with gratitude, once again, we recognize and honor all the ancestors and all of the ancestors of the lands we occupy. We also recognize and honor you, dear Kapotid, for joining our conversation today. And as always, Stephanie and I leave you with a blessing. As you continue on this brave journey of decolonization, May you recognize the imperial trauma and imperial melancholia in your own story so that you are able to find paths to experience energetic healing for yourself and for your ancestors. Along with the truth of grief, may you also learn to choose empowering stories when speaking of the past, and may you alchemize those stories into empowered action for a better future for all of us. May the remembrance of Kapwa anchor you into your heart, and until we meet again, may you know that all is well and will be well, and that no matter what happens, you are